Hello all, I'm Jaha Zainabu, and welcome to Storytime with Jaha Zainabu 14 slash 365. So 14. Today I'm gonna talk about writer's block. I'm going to talk about writer's block in a way I don't always talk about writer's block. But before I begin, what is the random story I'm going to begin with? I don't know this. I usually have it somewhat prepared. You know what? There are going to be so many random stories in this story time that maybe I won't begin with one today. I'm going to talk about writer's block though. And I wrote down a bunch of places, a bunch of questions to myself about writer's block and when I get stopped, why am I stopped, and what I do when I'm stopped. And I do get stopped. I say all the time, I don't believe in writer's block. I don't, because I do think that something shows up when we sit down to write. I think that we swipe left on the topics we don't write about. While I don't believe in writer's block, I do believe in things we don't want to write about. I believe in that. I believe in that big time. Usually, even take today with me and this video. It's fairly late at night today. It's before midnight, but it is late. My commitment every day is only that I record the video before midnight on that day. Because it's excuse me, because the videos are an hour long at least. It takes about 3 hours or so to upload. So but my commitment is that I record the video every day. It does not have to load until when it finishes loading. Like today is, what is today? Today's Tuesday. It's Tuesday at 9:45. So this video won't finish loading until sometime in the wee hours of the morning tomorrow. But this video is for Tuesday. You get what I'm saying? Okay. And I never wait this late to record. And so I spent a minute like, what am I going to read? And I really didn't have any poetry that I felt like. I always have poems, but I just didn't have any poems I felt like reading. It wasn't that kind of night for me. And I didn't know what I was going to talk about. And that was the whole purpose of creating this project in the first place. Create a story time that will last at least an hour every night for 365 consecutive days. The point is, you're gonna run out of poems you feel like reading, talking to myself. But the stretch happens when you do. What do you say? What do you talk about? And so that's where I was today, and I just kept swiping left on things that I didn't want to talk about. And so then it landed on, so I had kind of not writer's block, video block. So like what, and then I wrote down just a list of like why. So when we get stopped, why? And the list is in no real order. Just questions to myself, and I try as best as I could to answer the questions. And I invite you to answer the questions. If, I invite you to watch the video all the way through and answer the questions. I'd love to hear your answers. I'd love to hear comments from you because I get curious too, like why people get stopped. And so I'm just gonna go kind of down the list. So the first question that I had was, where do you, okay, sometimes when I write notes to myself, they don't always make sense. But in the moment, I'm like, this is going to be clear. It's not clear. But I said, basically, where do you get stopped and why? And then as a suggestion to where you get stopped, the suggestion to myself. So when I say you, I mean me too. The suggestion when we get stopped is to write a letter to that stop. Like stop, S-T-O-P. Write a letter to, like, to yourself in the moment. I'm sitting down. It is what time is it? 9:50. I'm at home in Atlanta. I am sitting down to write, but nothing is coming up. And then why? Like or nothing is coming up that I am choosing to write about. What is coming up is something heavy that shows up. And I don't want to write about that. And I don't want to tell that story. And maybe you kind of unpack in a few sentences why. So that's an exercise. Yeah, that's an exercise. And that's an exercise that can potentially get deep and triggering. And you are in control, and you get to stop when it's more than what you can handle. When you get stopped, one of the questions you could ask yourself, is what happens when you get confronted or triggered in your writing. For me, I get sleepy. This is a good time for a nap. And I might not come back to what I'm writing about. And an exercise the next time could be, when you get triggered in something you are writing, is to stay there. Even if you don't continue writing, but just stay there in it. Even if you have to remind yourself that you are safe. Yeah. Mine is an abortion. That comes up for me. It's a stop. It's a thing that is it something I ever write about? Not really. It is something that I did experience. It does not stop me in my life. It does not I don't live crippled by that decision. But it is a heavy pinpoint in my life. And I don't know what would happen if, I don't know what would happen if I actually wrote through that experience. As writers, we say that we want to be transparent or we want to be real and raw. We say that, but we don't even want to write about our own difficult stories. Even though nobody else will read them or hear them or know about them unless we share them. Like I am on my own sharing this with you. There's no gun to my head saying, tell the people of God. It's me. And so I think that this is me and what I think. Is this the law? Is this the rule? It's not the law. It's not the rule. I think that we can only go as deep with our characters as we are willing to go with our own stories. And again, when I say like going deep with our own stories, I don't mean stories that we publicly tell. I mean, we can't even write our own stories to ourselves in our personal journals. And so if we can only swim to 7 feet with our own stories, and then we try to dive into the deep end with our characters, sometimes it does ring false. It does. Again, this is not the rule. This is not the law. These are my thoughts. And I think that the more willing we are to tell our stories, the deeper our characters get to grow, get to be. And this does not suggest that, if you have not experienced something as heavy or as deep as that, then you can't write a deep story. That's not it. It's everybody. I don't care how perfect your life is. Everybody has something, even if it's just, everybody has something that is a part of their story that they are probably not really vocal about. Even if it is you grew up in a great house, had a great childhood, and you also grew up hearing really racist remarks about Black people, Mexican people, whatever. And it's a thing that you've wrestled with. Like, why does Dad treat the gardener like that? Or why? I'm making shit up right now. But like, it's a thing that you don't tell people. We all have a thing we don't tell people. And expressing that, putting those feelings, those thoughts, those things into words, which is not an easy thing. I am not suggesting that it is. Writing is work. Writing is work, my friend. You will wrestle with yourself. You will wrestle with your stories. You will wrestle with ghosts. You will wrestle, my friend. So just telling those stories in your journals or to yourselves, I think helps strengthen your writing. Even if you don't talk about that thing, like, even if you don't give your characters that thing or that story, you being able to swim in deep water with the stories of your life will help you swim in deep water with your characters' lives. And yeah, especially if you are, say you're not a fiction writer, especially if you are at a place where you want to write a memoir, like people talk about that all the time. You can tell the story of your life, but you have to tell the story of your life. Even if you pull certain things out, it needs to come out of you at some point. If you pull it out, that's fine, but you got to get it out. I think. Even places where you look bad, places where you have been wrong to others, and we have all at some point been wrong to others. I think that's my thing about people who call out people, public shame people. It's like if you aren't a person who will call yourself out, if you are not putting yourself on the same mat, then that's my feeling. Okay? Then why are you doing it to others? Especially when, now sometimes there are times that that's what you have to do. Sometimes that's what it is. Yeah, sometimes you have to do that. It's giving Anita Hill right now. Sometimes you got to do that. But sometimes the point can be made without making somebody else, putting somebody else on front. Sometimes you don't have to do that. And that's kind of how I do my stories. If I don't, if the person who did whatever, to me, if I can avoid calling them out, and usually I can, I really, no instance is popping up to me where I feel like I had to say this person's name, then I won't. Because the point is the point, or the situation was the point. I'm kind of going away from my notes, and when I want to go back to them, I will. So just kind of follow along. It's all about writing. I I have people that I'll never call out. I'll never mention their names ever, for my own reasons. I was married a cajillion years ago. It didn't last long, but I was at one point married. I was only married one time, not to the father of my son. Before the father of my son, I was married. And I never have stories that anywhere say my ex-husband, ever, because there's no need. Especially if I was only married once and you know who that person is, then you know who that person is, and I don't need to blast him for whatever the situation is. I could tell the story. I could give the situation without saying, and X person, person XXX did this. And I've told several stories about that situation. Some of them begin with this guy I dated. But who he is not important, you know. Yeah, and blasting him is not important. We have no children together. We had no business together. We had no, you know what I mean? And so I can easily tell the story with, I was in a relationship with this guy and this happened and this is what I learned from it. This is my lesson from that experience. I have one child. So obviously I have one son's father. I never mention, I have no, on any platform, on any book, I don't have baby father stories. I just don't. Because if you know who he is, it's not important for me to put him on blast for anything. In my list of whys, the top of the list is he is the father of my son. And, I have a high respect for my son. And my son has a high respect for his father. And out of respect for that relationship, my son will never Google his mother and see his mother talking bad about a man that he loves. Like, why would I even do that? I don't, like, that's a relationship I don't even really, that's personal. I might have, and my son is grown now. He's almost 28 years old. So there's nothing to really, and then he said to me, there's nothing to do that for. And so that relationship I've always kept very private. I don't, it's just not a relationship I'm ever willing to publicly badmouth, and so like we can have these lives, and I'll say whatever I want to say in my journal, or you know what I mean, something like that. But shaming people, like, for me, like, there are certain things that I don't have to do, where was I going? Okay, I'm gonna go to the next question. So I said, who or what, this is question number 2, who or what are you writing for? Who or what are you writing for? I have mentioned in story times before this one that I was always going to be a writer. I have my entire life known that I was going to be a writer. I did not know that I was going to be a poet, but I always knew I was going to be a writer. And I have also mentioned my first writing project when I was a kid was a journal that I kept called My Famous Stories. And My Famous Stories in my childhood mind was going to be a very famous book. Hence My Famous Stories. So I was writing because I was going to be a famous book writer. That's what I was writing for my whole life. And then it became, when you listen to people, read, especially poets, when you listen to poets read, you kind of sometimes hear like what they're writing for. Sometimes you hear a poet on stage and she is really going through something, and you hear her like what she's going through, like she's writing to release this something, Back in, uh, when did Def Jam come out? Whenever Def Jam came out, you know, you heard the poets who wanted to be on Def Jam. Like you just heard like there was it was a model, and you heard that thing. Um, and maybe they didn't want, excuse me, to be on Def Jam, but it was you heard like that influence, that Def Jammy influence, on a lot of poets. So like, and so I'm asking you, like, what are you writing for? Not just now, but when you began writing poetry, what did you begin writing for? Was it, I just want to write in my journal and get it off of me, or I want to be a better poet, or be a better storyteller, or whatever your thing was? What were you writing for? Um, Number 3 says, what writing project would scare you and why? What writing project? A writing project that scares me. I think probably what I just said. I don't name names. I don't. Even in cases where I should. When I was 22 years old, I should have named a name, and I didn't. And today I don't even remember the name. At 22, this period of time, what was going on? I was kind of had a small group of friends, and we hung out in a small group. Like we would do coffee, or we would go to a football game. Football game meaning all of us graduated from Long Beach Polytechnic High School, go Jackrabbits, and we would go to those games. And there was a guy, there was a guy who began to hang out with us. He was a friend of the other people in the group. I didn't know him. He was new to me, but he was very familiar with them. And so I was comfortable just because of how comfortable they were with him. And at some point we exchanged numbers. And then one night, we both lived in Long Beach, not too far from each other. And one night he called me. It's a Thursday night, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm watching the Cosby Show." And he said, "Well, come over. Let's watch it together." Okay. And so I came over, and I went to his apartment, and he lived, again, not far from me. So I go to his apartment, and he's talking on the phone. And it was weird that he would still be talking on the phone after he invited me, but okay. I figure he would wrap up his conversation. So he's still on the phone, and he directs me to the couch. I sit on the couch, I watch, and he goes into another room, into the bedroom, and he's continuing his conversation. So I watched the Cosby Show. It's in its entirety. And then the theme song to A Different World is coming on. And so now it's weird. It's really weird because what am I doing here? So he comes out, and when he came out of the room, this would be our first time one-on-one. We always hung out in a group, but this would be our first time one-on-one. So he came out of the room and he was quiet, and in a weird kind of quiet. And I was sitting on the couch, but he directed me to like this kind of futon couchy kind of thing that he had sitting up. And so I was like, oh, okay, we're sitting here. So I sat there, but he kind of laid me down. And I was like, please don't let this be going where I think this is going. And I'm getting a little scared. I was like, no, I'm good. I just sit on the couch. No, so he kind of like direct. And I don't remember him talking. But at some point, he suggests with his body in a way that was not a suggestion that I lie down. And I did. As a woman, we make up in our minds quickly. Like, we deduce the situation, and I had determined to get out of that situation, not beaten up and alive. And what would have to happen for that to happen is what would have to happen for that to happen. And he he held me down, and I was like, I'm trying to talk. And then the conversation was not acceptable. In the end, he had sex with me that I'm not calling sex, because that is not what I wanted. And when it was over, he guided me to his door and not pushed me, like shoved, but forced, like heavily suggested with his arm that I be on the other side of the door. And the only words I remember him saying to me was, "Go tell," which was weird. And I just stood outside and he shut the door, and I stood outside of his door feeling like shit. Like, what the fuck happened here? And I should have gone and said something. I should have said that. But I didn't know what I would say, and I didn't know, And so at that time, I was working at the courthouse in Downey. And so I'm surrounded by cops and marshals, and I'm surrounded by, people I could say something to, who would direct me on what to do. But I didn't know what to say because, this is immature, but rape in my mind was jumping out of bushes and, somebody you don't know, and and this wasn't that. He called me and asked me to come over, and I did. And so on break, I'm telling my a friend that I worked with, and I'm explaining to her what happened the night before, and she said, that's rape. You were raped, and and so, and I did write about that, but I didn't. Even in my journal, I remember, I described him as this guy. I didn't say his name. I didn't call his name. I didn't say Daryl did this to me, and I don't know his name. I'm making up Daryl. So naming names is a thing that scares me. I think, it's a thing that scares me. Like what I'm afraid of, it getting bigger, and then it's a thing, and then I don't know. I gotta unpack that. And I know, and I have recently taken on suggesting to myself that I unpack something before I say I don't know. When I say I don't know a bunch of times, it's a red flag that maybe I know, and don't want to go into why I know or what I know or that I know. So I need to unpack that. There were things that happened to me that should not have happened to me or anyone by an adult man that I knew in a place where I should have been protected, and I wasn't. And I knew that even now, I'm not naming this person. See, I knew that his name coming out of my mouth and describing the situation would have been a very big deal and caused harm, and it would have been a story that did live with me forever. And I didn't call that name. And I have privately, I have not publicly. And if you know, you know. So that's a writing thing that scares me, and I said why. Or I'm kind of unpacking why. Oh, okay. This is interesting. So, okay, number 4. I said if before I turned the camera on to record this video, I was on the phone with a friend of mine who is also a poet, and a woman who I respect as a poet. I said to her, so you are in a hospital and you're okay. You have your mind about you, and you can use your hands and brain. And you are gonna die, and you are resolved about it. Like, you know what? This is it. And you ask for a pen and paper. What is that poem or letter about and to? Obviously, we don't know this, but for me, and I tried to answer all of the questions. So for me, I said, the letter is to my son. Yeah, the letter is, and it was a quick answer. The letter is to my son. Yeah, I'm trying to think, just in effort to go deeper with the answer, what I would write about. I don't know. I don't know what I would say. I don't know what I would say to my son that I haven't said. Yeah, I don't know. He knows that I love him. He knows that I respect him. He knows that I admire his work as an artist. He knows, like, there are things so maybe I would just say those things again. I don't know. But I feel pretty sure that it would be to my son. Okay, number 5. I said, what are you superstitious about? And what I'm superstitious about, I don't know. I don't think anybody likes to take on, the characteristic superstitious, but I think what I have superstitions around is, and I've mentioned this before in other videos. Watch the other videos. I have a thing about if the main character is a woman, if she has a child, I have not grown from this. I 100% always give her a daughter and never a son because I have a son. My reason behind that is, um, let's say, let's say the woman is dealing with, it's a health issue. The woman has to take her, she's in a fight with the hospital about saving her daughter's life. And because the daughter has cancer or whatever. I just, because I have a son, I'm not able to do it. And it's me. You do you. For me, I tend to give my main characters daughters and not sons because I have a son. So that I think that's probably the thing that I'm superstitious about. Having boy character, that's it. If there's something else, I have to think about that. I don't know what that something else is. What topics are you avoiding and why? I mentioned earlier a topic that I have avoided with the abortion. I mentioned that. It's not, I'm not afraid of writing about it. I just don't. Not don't like, not that. I mean, it's a thing, but I just don't. And if I have spoken about, I've mentioned it in poems, but I've never gone in detail. I never talked about who was with me and the women, the other women and men in the waiting rooms and lying on the I've never gone into detail like that. In fact, the only time I have mentioned it, or the only reasons I have mentioned it, is because it is important, I think, so that other women do not feel alone. Many women have been there. Yeah. And I'm going to move on from that. So that's a topic that I've avoided going into detail about. Number 7. So number 7 is under the topic of like, what is a thing that kind of has stopped me in writing. One of the things that I think the first major stop that I remember is, what grade was I in? I was a young girl. I don't remember what grade I was in, but after I was being babysat by my grandmother, so I was that young. And I am from a political kind of family where, I mean, in the sense that, the news is always on and discussed, and it's a thing. And I remember I wrote a poem, and in the poem I included the word Reaganomics. Obviously Reagan is in office, and I included the word Reaganomics. And my grandmother found the poem and she read it, which I felt was a violation. And I was further embarrassed because she, in a very laughing, joking way, said, "What you know about Reaganomics?" And it embarrassed me, and I was like, you know what, I don't need to talk about that. Like, I didn't, I don't know what I know about it. I heard it on the news. I don't know. But it stopped me for a long time. I don't know that it stopped me writing, but it certainly stopped me writing around her. I never wanted to be in the position where she would like ask me to read what I was writing, or demand I show her my notebook or something like that. So that was kind of, I think, my first stop. 8, what did I say? Wow. I was getting deep with my little questions. So I said, what would happen if someone did know what you're avoiding writing about? Then they would know. I mean, now that's my attitude. They would know. But growing up, I had my secrets. And I think that I would feel exposed. I hid childhood sexual violations. I hid that. And at the time, people, and I never, no, those things never were in my famous stories. Never. That's probably the only thing that was off limits to me putting in my book. I didn't want anybody to find it. I didn't want anybody to see. I didn't know. It didn't happen. And what would happen if someone did know? At that age, it would be a big deal to me. Today, I don't know. I don't have pretenses that I don't live or write like I'm perfect. I don't live like that. I don't live like that. And I don't ever be. I don't live like that. So I guess I can't say that there's nothing that wouldn't embarrass me or something like that. But I think that I would be embarrassed or whatever and move forward. However I moved forward. Maybe I'd write about it more. Like, okay, shit, if everybody know, fuck it. 9. Okay, 9, I said, what is or was your poetic character? By that I mean, I think when I began writing poetry, I would mostly talk about spiritual things, godly things, things that I thought made me sound smart. Mostly because I used to be heavily hooked about not having graduated from college. And I wanted people to think I was smart. And so words were a big passion of mine. Like looking in the thesaurus or the encyclopedia, whatever I could look at. Like the word of the day, I was obsessed with word of the day type booklets and stuff like that. And would often use them in a way that was weird. Like, yeah, that word does mean that, but it don't really go. But I didn't know that. I was just like, you see, I use that word, right? And since then, I don't have a hook about not graduating from college. People don't graduate from college sometimes, and I was one of them. And I consider myself to be very educated and smart. And I use words well, and I use mostly though I use words that communicate and reach people, and that's more a motivation than what I sound like to people. Okay, that was 9. What's 10? How did I skip 10? Well, somehow I skipped 10, And now we're at 11. Okay, I said, who are your poetry prompts? So sometimes if I want to write and I'm thinking, what do I write about? I feel like writing, but I don't know. I don't feel like writing about nothing. I don't, what's coming to, I might look at, I like to listen to poets talking. Not necessarily poets doing their poetry, but poets talking. Like, I like Googling or going to YouTube and seeing videos of Nikki Giovanni talking, like that conversation she had with James Baldwin, or I like listening to Toni Morrison talking, an interview or something like that. Toni Morrison, I don't think called herself a poet, but I do. Um, and so something in their conversation usually sparks like, oh, I'm gonna write about that. Yes. So that's a poetry. They're poetry prompts for me. So number 12. If someone perused all of your journals and notebooks, what do they know about you? Not not oh, based only what they read. So if you lost your notebook in a park and your name is not on the notebook and there's no picture of you in the notebook, and if somebody is going through the notebook or the journal, what do they know about you? And so you got to think about what you're leaving out. You know, and that will so if I'm when I was a child, if I lost a notebook, I would not be, unless you are a psychologist or something like that, I probably would not be somebody who would read through the pages and go, this girl was, you know, I seen some abuse, some sexual abuse here. You wouldn't, because those stories wouldn't be in there. But they would know that probably I was bullied, or they would know that I was teased, or they would know that I was a black girl. They would know, now they would know that, what would they know? Probably, they know a lot of my story if it happened now. And I think a better question is, what wouldn't they know? Probably not names, because I mentioned that before. But they know most of my experiences, but not names. Wow. Okay. I don't even remember writing this, but I did. And it just happened today, so you would think I would remember. Okay, 13 says, what is the area of your life where you feel most powerless? Powerless. Shut up, Jaha. Powerless. Or what's like the weakest area of your life? Do you write about that? If not, why? And what do you feel it would say about you if you did write about it? I know that question was kind of loaded, kind of packed. What is the area of my life that is the where I feel not as strong is the area of my finances. I am an artist, and I live, and not a necessarily a financially successful one. I do enough to get by, you know. Most months I can pay my rent. Some months it's a struggle. It's always a struggle. Well, no, it's not always a struggle. but there's always a dance, let me say. Um, there are very few months that the first of the month rolls around and I think, oh, let me pay this. That week leading up to the first is like, okay, there's that hustle for the last, I don't know, $500, $200, whatever. I, I do count pennies at the store. I do check my bank balance before I give my debit card to the cashier. I'm there. Um, you know, um, let's see. What else did I say? Da, 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 da. What do you feel it would say about you if you wrote about it? Um, like I said, these days, I don't really keep secrets like that. I think back in the day I felt embarrassed because maybe I could only get, if we go out, maybe I could only get a couple drinks at the bar. I think back in the day I might have felt embarrassed about that, or it would, you know, these days I'm like, I can't hang with y'all. I'm gonna eat at the crib. So, it's not fun at the end of the month, like, damn, I need to sell 4 more paintings. It's not fun, but, it's not, I don't wear, I don't have a lot of money like some scarlet letter, like I did before. I did. Um, so if I wrote about it, I could write about that, and I probably do. I probably talk about it, probably more than I should. Um, let's see, 14. Okay, 14. I said everyone is different in some way. How are you different? And the reason why I asked that is because I'm often trying to write a story about something, and I'm always looking for um, um, ways that my characters are different. And sometimes I'm really searching, like, do they have this, or but what I skip over, that I was just really weird and awkward growing up. Not really. I'm gonna stall myself out. Not really weird and awkward, but I was different. I was a little awkward, little different, you know. Um, and like, and but like in little ways, like I wasn't the, it was in little subtle kind of quiet ways. I was quirky. I remember, and I often went to sleep with a question of what's wrong with me. Um, and like things that I don't even write about, things that I never talked about. I remember when I was a little girl, I used to be a cheerleader. I was not the greatest cheerleader, but I was a cheerleader. I was on the team. And the team I cheered for was a team called the Vidars. So I was on the Vidars, and I was a cheerleader. And the other girls called me stiff, like, and there was a way that they would do me, in a way that they were like imitate a robot, and that was like them doing me. Yeah, and okay. Um, and there was this one time, so a bunch of teams got together. We were somewhere in Long Beach, but there were a bunch of the Long Beach like cheer teams little Pop Warner cheer teams, and we were all together. And during the day, there was opportunity for, girls from the Vidars to like connect with girls from like other girls and make new friends. Was the design of the program, I think. Well, I remember I was talking to a group of friends, and there were about 5 of us in the group. They were all Vidars, all girls that I grew up with, that I knew well and was comfortable with. And then one girl from another team, I don't remember what team or her name or anything like that, but she came over to us and she said, I thought she was coming over like, can I play with y'all? I thought it was giving that. But she came over and she said, one of y'all is weird. Which was weird. You're being weird, ma'am. But she was like, one of y'all is weird. And so she turned to one of the girls in my group and she said, do you want me to tell you who it is? And then she whispered in her ear. And then she went to the next girl in my group and said, you want me to tell you who it is? And then she whispered in her ear. And she whispered in everybody's ear but mine. And then she walked away. And when she walked away, all of the girls said, she said you. Well, obviously, she said me. But I remember thinking, like, how does she know I'm weird? Like, she's not even a Vidar. She don't even know me. What did I do? Like, and I remember, like, there, in every stage of my life, there was always, there was always a way I showed up as weird or quirky, in a way that somebody felt like they had to point it out. I remember I was working and this woman, she was a coworker, and she said, can I be frank with you? It's like, nobody asked your opinion about me, but go ahead. Sure, you can. And she said, she said, I can tell that, these were her words. She said, I can tell that you've been abused before because you make yourself look very unattractive, but you're really pretty. I don't know if there was a compliment under there, or, but it's like nobody asked you, but nobody, we don't go to lunch together, we're not friends. Why the fuck would you know? But she did say that. And so, but it's like, and those are not the only 2 examples. Like, people tend to want to tell me my quirks. And in a way that when I was growing up, I wasn't like, I didn't give a clap back to it. I swallowed it. And I went home to fix it. Like, okay, if this is wrong, then the next one, whoever the next one is, won't say this about me because I'm a, or if I'm too this, then I'll just, so I remember constantly growing up fixing me. I have a cousin named Angela who grew up in Philly, and she would come to Long Beach, to California, to visit us when we were children. My grandmother, my grandmother lived in Long Beach. Our family was in California, but she would come, from Philly to California and visit. And as a girl, I had long hair, black girl long, like just past my shoulders, you know. And I was always combing my hair. And I remember one day I was in the living room, and Angela and my sister were also in the living room. And in my grandmother's living room, there was a big mirror above the couch. And I remember combing my hair, like restyling my hair over and over. And Angela said to my sister, she made a comment. She was like, she thinks she's cute. And I didn't say anything to that. And I didn't have language for, I don't think I'm cute. I'm not combing and restyling my hair because I think that I'm cute. I am doing so because I feel like I need fixing. But I said all of that to say, I mentioned all of these little quirks or whatever to say, like, none of these things, these are things that I know intimately. I have good examples of, but I've never given these little quirks to a character. Like, I might give her cancer that I know shit about. I might give her whatever that I don't know nothing about. But what I know well, like, I don't use. And like, the characters we want to create, these interesting things, beings that we want to read about, are within us that we don't want to bring to the surface. So yeah, that's that the hour has gone by, and it doesn't scratch the surface of writer's block. We will revisit this, but thank you for joining me for Storytime with Jaha Zainabu 14/365, because that's where we're going. Thank you. I hope that you, well, if you're here, you listened this far, and thank you. I'd love it if you leave in the comments some things that stop you, or some things that you have been stopped by, you know, inside of writer's block or whatever. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope that you are well. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.